Yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Lizanne. And I also want to notify our audience that our current session is being translated into 6 different UN languages. So please feel free to use interpretation button to change the language and use that language in which you are comfortable listening and speaking. So we want the session to be super interactive. We want to hear from you. So if you have any comments during the session or after the session, please feel free to write your comments in the chat, and it all will be recorded because we have very hardworking team working on the background to make sure that your comments are collected. And if we can't respond it right now, we make sure that we record it and we'll respond it in later too. I'm sorry to say that you all are muted, but the only reason that you are muted is due to interpretation. So we have a list of young people who would like to speak, but if you like to give your comments or suggestions or any other question, please feel free to raise your hand if you'd like to speak so that we can give you the floor. Next question answer feature of this platform, you can see the question answer button, and we will be using this question answer button for this platform to have a good question answer discussions. So your all questions will be recorded also, and if we can't answer it now, we will respond it later. We'll also use the tool Mentimeter in between the sessions, and to use the Mentimeter, you just need to go to your web browser and write www.menti.com and use the code in the respective sessions. Right now, we are using Mentimeter to get to know that from where you are joining. So please go to the menti.com and use the code 90720102, 90720102. And Jenna just posted in the chat. So please go through the link that Jenna posted in the chat and then use that code so that we can know, okay, someone is joining from Mexico.
Brazil.
France, Germany. We don't have anyone from Asia right now, so please, people from Asia. Okay, we have Sweden.
In Asia, it can be quite late now, right?
It's kind of late. Okay, we have Sri Lanka already. Thank you for a person joining from Sri Lanka. We have Rome, Italy, Switzerland, France, Sweden, Brazil, Mexico. Europe is leading right now. Okay, please go ahead. Please go to the menti.com and use the code 90720102 and type where you're tuning in from so that we can all know about from where our participants are. We have Egypt. Okay, hello. Please, I'll leave 1 minute for it, then we'll go to the next slide.
Then I will take over to talk about the compendium.
Yes.
I will just go now. We will use this also later, but also feel free just to write in the chat if you have any comments or any suggestions and you're not really comfortable with Menti, just write in the chat and we'll also have a look at it. So I will now go to the Youth Compendium, Youth Action Compendium, and talk a bit about that. Well, first of all, thank you all for being here. The Youth Action Compendium will mainly be about a summary of youth statements. So the past periods, youth have made themselves heard in a variety of ways. So from statements to manifests to different pledges, such as the Act for Food, Act for Change pledge. But yeah, before I start, I want to make sure that to acknowledge that this is a starting point. So see this as a zero draft, as a first starting point where we can work together after this on how to improve this and how to continue with this process. And please feel free, as I just mentioned, to think with us on what your thoughts are on this. So as you also see in the slides now, you see these amazing icons, the food icons that were also recently launched. And and that will also be used after this as a way to visualize also food-related items. But first, about the Youth Action Compendium. So what is it actually that we try to do? So the goals of this one is to have like a repository for decision makers and policymakers at various levels to serve as a guiding tool, but also to have like a knowledge and action repository for youth and as an inspiration to with case studies per commitment area. But then how did we came about with these statements? So as I just mentioned, there are a variety of statements, pledges written, but we had to start somewhere. So we collected worldwide statements and manifestos from a range of groups. And again, we had to make a selection. So we went with mainly the worldwide statements to have a broad view on that. And we selected 10 different documents, for instance, the HLPE report, the report for indigenous youth statements, and also the Act for Food, Act for Change statements is in there. What we next did was we took these statements, manifestos, and coded them along the 4 betters from the FAO strategic framework and the position priority areas that are under it. So there are 20 of them, and we coded them alongside these. Finally, these statements that came out of these different coding sessions, they were synthesized and summarized into one. So we made sort of an overlay to see what are now the main priority areas that youth come up with. What we saw, for instance, that words like food security and food sovereignty were mentioned quite a lot. So that was also what was mentioned in this document as one of the foundations. And also my dear colleague Jenna will share in the chat again the document where you can see also or read along with this youth compendium what we have written and the statements that are in there. If someone else can put it in the chat so that people can read along, because that is what came out of this coding session. But then you might wonder, what do we actually want to do with them? Because we're talking here about action, and it's just mainly statements, which is great for policy, but what are we going to do with them afterwards? First of all, I have to mention that it is also something to decide on together with the working group that will work on this later. But one thing that we thought about was to use these statements and the priority actions that came out of this mapping exercise, which will of course be an ongoing process, but to use them as a guiding tool for young people and policymakers with specific actions. So how this can look like? Well, for instance, we can create an actionable solution dashboard where you, for instance, if we take better nutrition, you can state a specific priority area and then can find specific action plans that are already happening, because we want to make a synthesis of actions that are already happening in the field on a local level or on a national level, so that you, if you go as a youth to this compendium, you can see, oh, I want to be involved. I want to do something in my own community. How can I start? And you can see, oh, someone is already doing this somewhere else in the world. How can I do this myself? So it's really like an inspiration, but also for policymakers to go here and see, oh, what is already happening in the local community. But again, this is of course, an ongoing process, and we need everyone's help to make this really happening. This is one. This is something that the youth compendium can be really useful for. Then another question you might have is, why not select already existing statements for this? Well, first of all, we want to have an inclusive platform where we don't select one document or one group over another. So that is why we decided to use different statements instead of selecting just one and go with that. Second of all, by using different statements and different documents, we also we also might get more statements that we might otherwise miss if we only select one. And finally, the third one is that by overlaying different statements, different documents, that we get main priority areas, because we also need to acknowledge, of course, we want to have an inclusive, we want to have, in the best case scenario, we want to do everything, but then in the end, it might be too much. You cannot focus on everything. So we have to select different priorities that we, for instance, can focus on in that specific year. And then at the end, you can see, oh, did it work? So that you have really like making priorities. So that, and this was the way we could do that. So this was the document that came out of this. And this is also in the summary or in the document that we sent. And don't read it all because it's quite a lot. We do ask you to maybe have a look at it later as well. And we also, after this, we go over the different statements. But for now, you can see here the different areas with a few statements that are written besides them. That came out of this mapping exercise and this coding exercise. But now, as I mentioned, I would also like to hear from you. And I hope there it is loading. We would like to hear from you because we have these different statements written, but we also want to make sure that you feel heard and that you can give your priority. So that's why we want the idea is to have now a bit of an, we want to hear from you. So there are two ways you can do this. First of all, we ask you to go to Menti again and select one of these statements as a priority for you. And in the second way is that you can put in the question and answer box within the chat, if you're seeing something that is missing, do you have another priority in your mind that you think should be in the compendium and that you would like to see there? Please indicate it in chat, which we can take along because if we cannot answer it now, we can take it along later. So please go to menti.com and type the code and indicate your priority. So if you cannot read it, I will read them also here. The first one is the shift towards more plant-based diets while recognizing, and this is an important thing, also the social and cultural and economic context. Second of all is to support farmers to grow healthy, nutritious food and to allow them to realize their agencies in agri-food systems through access to resources, so that we make sure that farmers have access to different resources like money, like seeds, like land. The third one is that people can maintain, revitalize, protect terrestrial marine areas. There it goes. Yeah, now I have to make sure. Let me see where I was. Now it's now in the third place. It's on the fourth place, to maintain, revitalize, and protect terrestrial and marine areas and traditional, indigenous, and local knowledge with accessible data. And also the final, ensure fair and decent access to resources like land, water, and seeds for smallholder, family, indigenous people, and youth farmers. So that's like, and I see things are shifting now. I will wait for a few moments. And also, please, again, you can put in the chat if you think there's something missing, or do you think there should be something that should be mentioned in other way. Later, you also have the ability to make your live intervention. So we give you the floor to express also your thoughts on this. But first, we want to see where your priorities are laying. And if it's not working to go to Menti, please also write in the chat so that we make sure that you are heard. Thank you, Parmisha, for putting it in the chat. And please indicate also if it's not working. You can also put in the chat like a 1, 2, 3, 4, if that's more comfortable for you. I see. Okay. Yeah, good one, Giovanna. I see that you have other questions, but it's also good to have it in the chat. So Giovanna says now in the chat, she would go for 1, the more plant-based diets. And also again with the social, cultural, and economic context in that. I see now more people also coming with. Ahmed would say 2. I'll go back to, I think it was the resources one. And Parmisha, question to you, what would actually be for you the main priority in this one?
My main priority would be the priority that it's in the first right here. What a coincidence, Lisa. That it's ensure fair and decent access to resources like land, water, and seeds for those small-scale food producers, young farmers, because I think change starts from on the ground rather than top-down approach. I think we need to accelerate the change from the bottom-up approach. And if we truly empower those people who are working on the ground and working on the community level, then only we can bring the change rather than just telling them what to do and when to do. So I think we need to focus more on the ground aspect. And what is yours, Lizanne?
Yeah, I found this really actually a hard one because I'm from the Netherlands. So for me, yeah, the resources, I think it's also really a priority. But also I think plant-based diets for me in my context, and I really stress this one, is also really an important one. But again, it's also really politically sensitive as well, here as well, because we have a lot of farmers, and I talk to them and it's also their way of earning money. So either 1 or 2 would be for me an important one, because I think if you also ensure fair and decent access to resources, farmers might also have more ways to have money for sustainable agriculture. So it has 2 ways again. But I see also in the chat that, let me see, is there someone who selected number 4? I see, it's now shifting to towards number 3. But is there someone who mentioned maintain, revitalize, and protect terrestrial and marine areas that would like to come in and tell something why they think this one is important? Please put your hand up and we can give you the floor.
Yeah, please feel free to raise your hand and speak on the priority that is selected. So if you have selected 3rd priority that you are seeing right now, then please feel free to raise your hand so that we can give you the panelist.
And I also see now in that Anna Christina also is mentioning that also correct agri-food education.
Yeah,
that's a really good one. It's also in the better nutrition. That education is also really important. This is mainly on the production side.
So Anna, if you'd like to go ahead, please let us know so that you can speak on why did you select that priority in the first hand.
I also see a question now in the chat. Is it possible to contribute to the compendium at a later stage? And how would you do that? That is certainly a good question. And that is certainly also possible. We made a Google form, which I see Jenna is also typing. In the Google form, you can put your feedback, your input, and contribute in that way, so that we also collect it there. And please feel free also to share it with other youth organizations so that we have as many input as possible. And then I will also go now to the second slide, because there are more areas, of course. So this was mainly on better production. So now I would like to, let me see, there's also a question from Anna Christina. Let me see where it was.
Anna just asked if the compendium is available in other languages or not, but yeah, Jenna already responded. It is currently only in the English language, but we'll make sure that the final version of these action compendiums and all the drafts will be available in all the official 6 languages. So stay tuned.
Great. And I see this one is already ranked. So I think this one was the one that Giovanna mentioned earlier, but that's great that this was already entered, because here we can see already like the 6 rankings. So the first one, stimulate and promote the creation of inclusive local production and short chain food networks with diverse foods. Is there someone who would like to come in and explain to us or tell why you think this is an important one? Or have a question on it, or do you miss something in this part?
Yeah, please feel free to raise the hand so that we can give you floor. And if you are not comfortable speaking, also use the chat button to write your reflections or any comments about this. If you want to raise hand, you just go to the lower bar, and next to the share screen option, there is raise hand option, which has the hand icon like this, and then you just click there, and we can see that you raise your hand, then we can give floor.
Oh, I see Anna, she can't join, she's having breakfast with her family. Well, that's also important.
Food first.
And it's also really interesting because it also coincides with what I saw in the documents. So I read a lot about stimulating the local and the short chain food networks, also to empower and make transparency more possible on a local level. So I'm not surprised, and I'm wondering for you, Parmisha, are you surprised here that at the top there is also the local production and short chain food networks?
I'm not surprised, Lisan, because this year we also saw a lot of conversations and the food system dialogues, and most of the priorities, especially from the young people, are also having the local and autonomous food production and the strengthening local food value chains. Because also from the recent COVID-19, we saw that how important it is to have the local autonomy on the agriculture and the food production system. So I'm not surprised at all, Lisan, for now.
And have you seen also perhaps during all the, oh, I see Maria also raising her hand. Yeah, please come in.
I'm actually very surprised, and I mean, this is a very difficult ranking, right? To decide amongst these 6 which one is most important or relevant, and yeah, it's also very subjective, right? To context dependent issues and challenges. But I've always had a predominant not preference, but I do understand the basic need for providing inclusive and integral food education. And I feel that that's at the beginning of it, right? I mean, how is it possible to, you know, include healthy, sustainable feeding programs if you're not educated on it, or stimulating and promoting the creation of local production? I mean, it's easier said than done, right? So personally, I would put what is now ranked as 6th as actually a basis to ensure that all of the above, which is fundamental, but to ensure that all of the above kind of actually happens. But I see another few hands raised, so I'll mute myself now. But thank you for giving me space.
Just before you mute, we have a kind request from our colleagues, interpreters. If Pramisha, you can put your headphones now because
She hasn't.
okay, and maybe to lower a little bit your volume, because it seems that the voice it's very high and and it's difficult to interpret it. Thank you.
Yeah, and Maria, I heard there's someone putting his hand up, so I would like to give the floor to that person.
Christina, she is now part of the panel, so please, Anna, feel free to speak now by unmuting yourself.
Yes, perfect. Hello, everybody. I totally agree with Maria about all of this being interconnected, and that the part of food education is essential to understand the rest of them and to lead to action. I actually voted for it was number 3 now, the reduction of food loss and waste, because of its impact. It has both a social and an environmental impact. And I think this is the first one that we should tackle, because it is so interrelated to hunger, to how do I say this, emission of CO2 to the environment. So I believe this one is one of the first we should tackle, but they are all interconnected. Thanks.
Thank you. Yeah, and I couldn't agree more, because that's also why it's so hard to make. And I also, when we made like the document, we had to make like a priority list, and it's really hard because there are all already variety of issues, and it's really hard to pick one. And also, I'm actually surprised that the food education is at the bottom, because I have seen it a lot in all different documents. That this was one that came on a lot of times. But yeah, it's really interesting that you mentioned now that food education might be at the really beginning of it. Also really interesting, Pramisha, how you think about this. And also Anna, of course. Yeah, please come in.
I was only going to say that I believe that education is at the bottom because it was the last option in the survey. So I believe people couldn't look at it and just left it at the end.
Yeah, that might be the technical difficulty also. So if you agree at the food education, please feel free to write in the chat so that we can also capture your views. And I totally agree with both Maria and Anna Cristina, because if you want to scale up the solutions, you need to get to know about the problem first, right? And getting to know about the problem starts with awareness and education. So I also truly hope that the World Food Forum will be the platform to increase the awareness and education about the food system issues and currently agri-food system issues that we have. Also, I want to capture some of the comments from the chat section. Chiamo had written that first one is very important. I don't know which was first at that time, but I believe that it was stimulate and promote the creation of inclusive local production, when Chiamo wrote this in the chat. And he says that as 98% of land is owned by only 1% of the population, which puts the security of the food systems in South Africa of 98% completely in the hands of only 1%. That is not sustainable. So he's focusing on how handful of a power group is holding this ownership of the global food system.
Well, actually, I want to also come in on that, because I think that's also the role in supermarkets, for instance, what I think also, because they have a lot of power in that. So that's also, in my opinion, in my country, for instance, there's a lot of superpower in supermarkets. But yeah, that's also context specific. So yeah, I think never in a food system there should be one party that holds all the power, no matter where it is. But that's just my my view on this. Anna, please come in.
Yes, I believe as well in my country there is a lot of inequity, and we're trying to build resilient and inclusive food systems. So when we have, in my case, we have organic foods that are super expensive and not every person has access to it. So I believe with this, the true cost of food, and with the right incentives, we can make this a more inclusive food system.
Yeah, and the true cost of food is also one of the priority areas in the document. Yeah, I've seen it also a variety of times in different statements mentioned. So thank you for this.
Yeah, I also saw the Amira hand raised before. So Amira, if you want to still come in, please go ahead. Yeah, can you please promote Amira to panelist? Maria? Or... Okay, Amira, you are a panelist now. Please feel free to unmute yourself and speak.
Hi, good afternoon. I give my voice to number 4, but actually, the voice is clear. Hi.
Yeah, you're perfect.
Yeah. Okay. I give my voice to number 4, but I believe that number 6, education or awareness, must walk side by side with each other statement. We have to raise awareness of every other statement. I have a personal experience with number 4 because my health was destroying by fast food and marketing, and I get rid of all of this, and I became plant-based diet and keeping myself safe by organic food. So I believe, and I believe in these systems, and but the less of education, of awareness, not letting people or not letting the community giving time to understand the importance of each other statement. So we have to raise awareness, and in the same time we have to listen the other voices of super over marketing of unnecessary food, and in the same time we have to be aware about our production and our consumption. So we have to raising the awareness side by side with letting all other bad options. I'm sorry for saying bad, but it's bad. Other options to give people the time and the space to understand the importance of their own options and the importance of nutrition and increasing the local production. That's all for now. So I believe that's all the circle.
Yeah,
That's
you're really right. And again, as you also mentioned, food education is really important in that one. Thank you, Amira.
So thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Amira. And we also have a lot of interesting conversations and discussions in the chat, and we'll make sure that this all is recorded. We have done this ranking exercise on the basis of the 4 betters of FAO strategic framework: better nutrition, better food, better life, and better environment. So now we are in the better nutrition part. Please go to the menti.com again and use the code. It is loading right now.
Yeah, and please be aware that this one, yeah, it's loading now. Yeah, so
Use the same code 90720102.
I see here it is also already ranked. This one I was thinking it's already answered. Yeah, this was one we already had. yeah, now it comes the better environment. So we just had better production, we had better nutrition, and the two last are better environment
and better life.
So these are a little, are only a few. So here also, and see also that there is another code. But for this one, if you are missing something, please also indicate, because they're all interwoven, as we just discussed also. So if you're talking about environment, you're also talking about production, you're also talking about nutrition, you're also talking about better life. So yeah. And also, if you see here, the first one, invest in resilient and nature-positive agri-food systems through the application of innovative approaches for sustainable agriculture. Then we talk about variety. We can talk about variety of things. So what we saw was, for instance, agroecology, regenerative agriculture, permaculture, agroforestry, circular food system. So there are a variety of ways you can look at this. But yeah, they have some similarities, they have some differences, but it's mainly
please feel free to go to the chat where Jenna has posted the link and use the code 73586089 and rank the priorities that you did in the before slide. Please go ahead. We're very excited to look into the results.
And it's also interesting to mention that there was recently, I don't know if it was only in Europe, but I think also worldwide, that there was a huge human-led from society, a petition on the ban of useful harmful chemicals and pesticides, which was signed by almost 1 million people. So yeah, that was also, I think it was very interesting to see that happening, which in this way coincides with the third one.
Yeah, so Lisa, let's go to the slide where we can see the responses.
This is the slide with the responses, but there's nothing.
No one is here, but yeah, I just submitted mine, but it is not seen. I think it is loading.
Oh, I see Anna mentioning.
I think there should be the next screen. Can you please? Yeah.
Here. Yeah, here there are responses.
So the first one right now is organize agri-food systems around food sovereignty, considering food as a basic human need and right, followed by leave no one behind as a principle in policy discussions, decisions, and dialogues. And we also have recognition and acknowledgement of indigenous and local communities as experts and resilient and sustainable agri-food system. It is very difficult to select since everything is important, and we can also reflect from the previous part that nothing can act in silo. We all need everything together based on the specific local or like region-wide or specific country-wide strategy. But yeah, it's still organizing agri-food systems around food sovereignty is ranking top. We have 13 people here.
It's very interesting to see them also on the same level a bit, because yeah, they're all somehow connected again.
Yeah.
Which makes it really hard to select one. But what I saw, and also interesting about what others think, but I saw in different statements that the part on food sovereignty was mentioned quite a lot. So to have more a human-centered, and we also heard it this morning, to have a more human-centered food system where with more transparency. So there's a repeating theme here, I see.
Yeah, and food sovereignty is often overlooked aspect because we often talk about food security and the 4 pillars of food security, but in these conversations, often we miss the part of the food sovereignty. So I feel glad to see this as the.
Yeah, sorry. I also want to see Ahmed Maher in the chat. He says also 1, food sovereignty. Ahmed, if you feel comfortable, would you be would you be able to share with us why you think this is important and how you would envision this for yourself or for a more broader view? And if you're not comfortable, it's also okay, of course.
Yeah, if you're comfortable, please raise your hand so that we can promote you to the panelist. Also, you can explain your views in the chat so that we can capture those. Or anyone who is interested to speak on this topic, please come forward so we can give you the floor and engage in this discussion.
Ah, Anna
Okay.
is coming in. Hi.
Hello again. I was thinking about how we should move. I'm echoing what you already said, but we should move from food security to food sovereignty, because actually last week we started the Food Film Festival, and there was a documentary named Gather from the United States, and they were talking about, for example, how when the United States of America were colonized, the buffaloes were almost extinct, and they were really important for the sovereignty of, I can't remember what phrase it was, but it was very important for the local community because they ate and they made their houses from their skin. So I think it is not only food security, but we should move to food sovereignty, because everybody must have the right to create and build their own local food system. Thanks.
Yeah, and also if you can share in the slides maybe the movie that you saw, that the others, if they're interested, they can also have a look at this. At least for me, I am now interested to have a look at this movie. And I see still people that enter it.
Now the position is quite changed, although the ranking looks similar. Now we have policy discussions with the second rank.
And I tried to, we have now the better life, but we went over the better environment. I just want to try if it's still working. So if you now click on in the Mentimeter, just have a look if you can see the Menti question. And if not, please write in the chat which one you think is most important, so that we still have your ideas on this one. It's loading. Yes.
Here we have three options under the better environment. The first is investment in nature positive and resilient agri-food systems through the application of innovative approaches for sustainable agriculture. Similarly, we have next option, move towards public policies and investment that incentivize environmentally and socially friendly practices on a long-term basis. And the third is ban the use of harmful chemicals.
What do you think, Pramisha? Which one? Ah, there it goes.
Okay, we already have one response who has ranked move towards public policies and investment that incentivize these practices on a long-term perspective. I think in my perspective also, the rank which is in first rank right now, that option is important for me, although these all are important, because once we implement the policies and once we move towards the public policies and investment, then I think it will have to incentivize the public and all the other related stakeholders to act more. So I think investment in policy is quite important, but all the options are quite important, because on the part of harmful chemicals also, we can already see the impacts that they are having on in the environment, in human health, in animal health, and many more. So I think these all are important. So we can see the second option here, investment in nature positive agri-food systems.
Yeah, and I also had a conversation with someone else who mentioned also that still subsidies are put on a lot of, well, not very nature positive actions, and since subsidies also are not for most often not for 1 year, but for longer. Yeah, you sort of commit to something that is not really good for our environment. So I think this, for me at least, this one is also very important to have a look at.
Yeah, and shifting subsidies towards nature positive production practices and sustainable agriculture is important, while taxing those practices, which is harming the current food systems and environment as a whole. And I can also see the comment in the chat. Joanna said, I did not go with 3 because there is no alternative 8, which is also a valid premise, because we need more alternative on how to shift the farmers towards other practices. And yeah, that's also valid.
If I can, I think that's a good one, because there are some alternatives. For instance, you can do multi-cropping, which already helps to, it's not, of course, no pesticide or something else, but it can already on a natural basis make sure that you have less pest and diseases. But still, yeah, you need, I also talked with biological farmers, and they sometimes also have a problem that they need to use something, but they don't want to. And yeah, it's like a mix in that. You have to make choices.
Yeah, and there are some alternatives, but we are in a like transition phase, that how to keep the farmers in the transition and how to shift from the current practices to those alternative practices like agroecology, permaculture, without disrupting the current value chain and food systems and production systems. So this is quite complicated.
I think this one again also links to the one we previously talked about, like with resources and seeds and for instance, also access to technology, where I'm working then on in my own job, that can also help to like give more insight in pests and in diseases, and also in interpret it or come in with that on the earlier phases. So before, so that you can still, more locally, for instance, spray or in that way.
I see Joanna's hands raised. Joanna, please go ahead. Good to see you. You are muted, Joanna.
You don't hear me? Do you hear me?
I hear you.
I was saying, like, building on the comment I made about the harmful chemicals, I feel that it's really conflicting, as for instance in France there has been a lot of debates about neonicotinoids that kill the bee, and which is proven, and it's actually all over Europe, and they reintroduced it out of probably lobbies, and I find that to be appalling. But at the same time, for instance, glyphosate, which was also very much discussed in Europe, has been reintroduced because it has been deemed as the only alternative that is cheap enough for farmers to use. And I think that the other two options are the basis for which, on which we can build on to ban the harmful chemicals, which is a problem because sometimes lawmakers make policies to ban the chemicals before they invest. And I think the investments into those communities are absolutely something we can't go without. So please fund the farmers first, and then let them transition to a friendly, environmentally friendly technology.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, that's really a good point. And I also see now that Parmisha has to leave us. But thank you, Parmisha. I really
Thank you, Lizanne, and it was a very insightful discussions. But I just wanted to tell that since this is a zero draft on all the documents that we are working right now, and we acknowledge that this is not perfect because this is just a start. We need to incorporate several different already available action plans, networks, and build synergies working together. So we have not been perfect. So we welcome you to join us. This is our platform. Woven it, work on it, and shape this as you wish. So I invite everyone to join us. Now I need to leave. Thank you, Lisa, for Assembly moderating this, and best of luck for the rest of the session. Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Bye. Thank you. Yeah, and I think you all have really amazing points. And as Parmisha has also, yeah, chemicals is really a hard thing. But I think it's also, I've seen it in a lot of different documents. So not mentioning it, I think, is also, yeah, it is something we need to think about. But if you like think that there should be other things stated here, I would also like to hear, is there something missing in this part on better environment? Is there something else we can add here? Maybe someone wants to, yeah, I see Anna coming in. Thank you. Yeah.
Hello again, everybody. I think that I would change the wording, because instead of banning the use of harmful chemicals, I would change it to regulating its use. I know it is already regulated, but I recently watched the Breaking Boundaries documentary, which explains the nitrogen and phosphorus cycle and how we got to a point where we overused them, and what we did in agriculture, we overused them, and then the water that led to the ocean and rivers was already polluted. So I don't know if our regulations are not being enough, or are not enough to avoid the pollution of our water bodies. So I would only change that wording, because I don't know, we were talking that there are no other alternatives. So maybe instead of banning their use, is regulated, but to a more, I don't know how to say this, but less, we should use them with more carefully.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, because we're now talking a little bit black and white, and I think it's not in that way. So it's not like banning. So I truly agree with like the wording should change. And also here more specific and more focused, for instance, use of chemicals, if not something else is available, could also help. But this is like more on maybe also on innovation and new ways of doing this. But thanks, that's really, yeah, it's really interesting how this can also evolve. So this document is like an ongoing process. So I truly take this along and change the wordings here, because I think this is really useful to have a more engaging a way of mentioning this. But if there's not something you're missing, then I would like to continue here. So I will have one. Oh, I see something from Abir also in the chat. I think with increasing population in the world and increased consumption, we can't prevent using chemical, but just decreasing it. Yeah, that's a good one. So, and that also a little bit coincides also with what Anna mentioned, like regulating it perhaps more. And I'm also, yeah, it's also interesting we had a conversation in a group. I talked with other youth about, for instance, greenhouses, because I'm from the Netherlands. So greenhouses is like what we have very many of. And there they use like less chemicals, but on the other hand, some might say, yeah, is it really natural? That's another discussion. So you have very different voices in this. And I think it's also important that we acknowledge this and state it in a way that we can have a constructive conversation about this. And Ibir, if you are interested to explain a bit more about what your thoughts on this are, please raise your hand. I will also continue to the last point before I wrap up. Because of course, here you had migrating to a vertical farming model. That's also a good one. I have been to some vertical farms. And it's also really interesting to look also in that way to context specific, because in some areas that also works and some it doesn't because of energy consumption. So there's also a little bit of innovation in that. Yeah, and oh yeah, good one. For those who don't know about vertical farming, actually it's like growing inside a building in different layers. Think about lettuce. Instead of growing it in one field, you can have like multiple layers on top of each other with light. So with LED lights, where you have specific wavelengths of that light, that the plants can grow well. So, and for now, they mainly do it with crops like lettuce, with herbs that are fast growing and can grow in quite some density. It doesn't work. I went to a vertical farm on tomatoes, and they were really looking a bit sad because it's still hard for these crops to make it really efficient. Of course, there are possibly very many examples where it does work, but that's what I know at least. It is like growing in different layers inside with artificial lighting. That's the idea of vertical farming. And then I have one last question for you all, because we've talked about what we can ask to governments, to policymakers, but it's also interesting what we as youth can do. So now I also would like to hear from you. This is my final question to you. Write in the chats, indicated here, what you think you or your youth group can do to engage in action. Is it to strengthen local knowledge, to advocate for education, to strengthen local action on nature conservation, or to engage with broader youth networks that you're in? There are several ways which we as youth can engage in the process. I see now jumping up to engage with broader youth networks for collaboration. That's really great, because that's also what the World Food Forum is trying to do. So to engage with a broader group, to engage with other youth networks, with other youth groups, with other youth, so not only groups, because then we can have a broader voice on this. Oh, and I see also someone writing in the chat some examples of vertical farming that is applicable at households up to bigger scales. Yeah, that's also something you can also have it in your own house. I have a garden in my own, or I have a vegetable garden in my own home as well. Yeah, I see engaging with broader youth networks on top again here. And if people are also, again, feel comfortable to share your ideas with this. Oh, there it goes again. And on the bottom, there is now support, advocate, and strengthen local and national action towards nature conservation and restoration. But yeah, maybe it's also, they're also right, interlinked. Greetings from Morocco. Hi, Saeed. Thank you for joining. There are coming more. But again, the engaging with broader youth network stays on top. So I think what we're doing here is, well, looking at this one is a good one. And with this, I will stop share my screen. And from Mauritius, hi everyone from Mauritius. Good that you're here. And I will give a short summary of what I've heard now during this conversation. So we talked about the Youth Compendium, about the action that are now written in different statements, in manifestos that we combined into one. Together we voted for different actions and priorities. And what I've heard is that education is key here. At least what I've in the better production, we talked about it, in nutrition, we talked about it. So key in the foundation of many of these areas is education, and starting early with that. Also, I will change the wordings on banning for chemical use. And also we've talked about like how to redirect money. So it's subsidies with taxes, or at least with subsidies that we finance more forward-looking initiatives. And we talked about vertical farming also. Thank you, Giovanna. And I think with this, we have some amazing points. We have some top priorities. And again, I acknowledge that they are interwoven. If you have more feedback, more statement, or are you missing something, please feel free to indicate it also in the feedback form, in the Google Forms that were shared in the chat, and have an easy, relaxed look at it and share your ideas later. That's perfectly fine. I saw also a hand from, I think it was Giovanna. Yeah.
So yeah, I wanted to interact with what you were saying, and the question about how to engage. Again, it's a point I raised this morning in another session, but I find that youth are ready to engage on many different fronts, be it environmental engagement or more specific agri-food system or nutrition education. The problem is that all of this is voluntary work. I mean, we have spoken about the invisible work that in gender studies was seen for households, but are we speaking about the invisible work of activists and engaged people on the environmental scene? So I think it's also something to note is like, how would youth engage, but also how could we promote this engagement by taking into account the livelihoods and the different situations, the context specific. I don't know, young mothers are less likely to join because preoccupation is not the number one question. You might notice that I'm very gender centric, but that's a question I work on a lot. But also for so many other reasons, youth are not are not participating in debates because they actually cannot, because it's so much time and so little remuneration of that work.
Yeah, that's really true. Everyone is doing this voluntarily, and you need to have time for that. So actually, I can also take this. I've seen it also in other statements, so maybe this is some point we can also take along in the compendium. Tommaso, please come in.
Yes. Hi, Lisanne.
Any question?
Sorry, can you hear me now, Lisanne? Sorry.
Yeah.
We are in an open space now, so audio is an issue indeed. So I think the results of the poll were indicating that I mean, what we're doing here is, of course, creating a movement, right? Because from the feedback that we received, youth is not taken seriously in public fora, and we desperately need that. But the fact that education was indicated as one of the main issues indicates us that we need a cultural change. We desperately need for a cultural change. And we can obtain that only working on education, you know, because at the end of the day, as also the Director General pointed out, now the 30% of the world's population is people of less than 30 years, right? So 30 years old. So this means that these people will be the leaders of tomorrow, right? So if we invest more on education and on how to create a better food future for all, this will mean that youth tomorrow will also be taken seriously. And you know, we desperately again need for this cultural change, and that is, in my opinion, the basis of of all other discussions, you know. Over to you, Lisa.
Thank you. Yeah, couldn't agree more. Oh, I see Maria also having her hand up.
Yeah, I actually wanted to ask a question, but thank you for the high five. No, I just wanted to second the education point, as we already discussed earlier. But I also I've been thinking about it since the first Menti exercise. And, you know, we speak a lot about this inclusiveness, which is fundamental, and not only inclusiveness of youth, but also for actions to be not just global, not just regional, but local as well. And so to make sure that it's inclusive on all fronts, on gender, on age, on multiculturalism. I mean, there's a lot that you can unpack when you use the word inclusiveness. But what I also wonder is if we should also make sure to kind of, because this came up this morning as well. I mean, the action plan is a basis for then localizing other action plans, right? Now they asked about translations, and that's a given. But I think that what I hope is that this action plan will be designed with these working groups and everybody who will join these working groups. But I also hope that it can kind of be just a little seed that then blossoms in a variety of areas and plants. And it's just not even an example to follow, not even just the first of many to come. I just want to make sure that it's not generalized. So it's inclusive, but not generalized, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, certainly. It's like more a guiding. That's why I also would like to refer to it as a guiding tool and not like as the tool. Because in the Netherlands here, we also have context-specific statements. And I think these should be always be used first because they are more like localized, more in context. So yes, certainly. And with this, I would actually, if you talked about the action plan already, with this, I would like to give the floor to Lawrence and to Lana, who will talk about the action plan. So what are we going to do after this and for the future of the World Food Forum? Lawrence, please, and Lana, please take the floor for yourself.
Thank you, Lisa, and thank you very much. And hi, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone who is joining us for this last part of this assembly session on the Youth Action Plan. It was a perfect transition, actually, Maria, thank you for it, because you just brought the action plan and the importance that it has to really bring the World Food Forum to really realize its aim and its goals. So first, to kick off this session and maybe know a little bit who is there, I would like you to tell in the chat what is the last thing that you ate before joining the session. And if you feel like it, you can also add what from where you are joining us. In the meanwhile, I will just introduce myself. My name is Laurence Jongro. I'm a former member of the team behind the Bites of Transformation project, which is a youth-led project supported by Switzerland that you might have heard of this morning by Amin, that introduced it to you. I have a background in environmental sciences and food systems, and I'm now an active member of the Bites of Transformation project. Oh, I see people from Egypt joining. Almonds, this is good. Really like it too. Eggs and coffee, this is really nice too, from Mexico. The fruit, nice. Pasta in Rome, Kazuki, makes sense. Risotto, this is really nice too. So thank you, everyone. And now I will give couscous. Oh, this is, I'm a little bit jealous of you all. I will now give the floor to Lana Weidgenand, who will do a short presentation on the Youth Action Plan, and then we will go to a discussion. So Lana is a climate justice activist that bridges climate actions and food systems. Among all the things that she's doing, she leveraged the power of consumers in changing food systems. She was also very engaged at the core of the Food Systems Summit, as she was the youth vice chair of the action track on shifting to sustainable consumption patterns. And she has coordinated youth engagement across the process towards the summit. So Lana, I give you the floor.
Thank you, Lawrence. Thank you for the introduction. And it's been so exciting being part of the youth engagement process for the UN Food Systems Summit, and now for the Youth Action Assembly for World Food Forum, as well as we've moved forward and built all of this youth momentum. So I think that's really why it's so important that we talk about how we move forward with all of this. And these are some of the ideas that we have put out so far for the action plan. This is kind of like, how do we move forward into next year and the years after to 2030, and what are we thinking about? And I really agree with what Maria was saying, that these are just ideas, and what we really want to do here is hear from you. What do you like about it? What do you wish would change? What do you think is missing? So that's how we want to approach this. It's kind of like, these are some of the ideas we've put out there, and we really want to engage you in the process. So that being said, some of the first goals that we put out are to reach equal representation from all of the regions in the world. So we want to make sure that we are getting those different regional contexts, and that we're not just representing one area, but instead have young people engaging from all throughout the world. And we want to make sure also, it's very important to us that this is not an exclusive or a closed process, but rather something that young people really feel represents ourselves, and that we can all participate in if we want to. So having that easily accessible is extremely important as well. And then as far as the youth priorities, we've been talking about youth priorities just before this, and we want to keep hearing from you. We also want to use what we have already found so far, such as through the UN Food Systems Summit. There was an extensive consultation process that has reached over 1,000 young people voting on priorities. So we want to use the information that we found, and also the priorities that we continue to hear from young people, and really have those integrated into what we are doing moving forward. Another of the goals that we set out is to make sure that we reach, so CFS, the Committee on World Food Security, and the COPs are the different conference of parties or meetings of different UN mechanisms, such as UN climate change. They have COP26 happening very soon. So making sure that we influence those spaces where food security and climate change, big issues that food systems impact, are talking about, having that meaningful engagement there for young people, we find is very key. And then also making sure that this is not just high level negotiations and out of touch with what's happening at the grassroots and the local level. We want to make sure that it's instead very in tune with that. And so moving on to some of the vision that we set out, thinking about what do we want to accomplish with this? What are we envisioning? One of that is for World Food Forum to be a key leader in achieving equitable food distribution and climate action. And that, of course, goes hand in hand with achieving the SDGs by 2030, the big overriding goal. And then also empowering young people across the world. So bringing young people to these opportunities and making sure that this does feel like an empowering experience for us. We also want to make sure that this is by youth, for youth, powered by global youth, and really meaningful in that sense. And that's important that we move forward with. And that it's also a space for young people of all constituencies, whether that's women, smallholder farmers, food producers, indigenous groups, low-income populations, LGBTQIA, all kinds of constituencies of young people to be able to engage. And also that this works as an educational platform, as education is also very key for the empowerment of young people. We also talked about, as we were looking at the action plan, what this can add to so many of the youth engagements that are already happening, of young people already taking action by ourselves in food systems. And some of those elements are having this platform to empower young people. Even though we can already do the work ourselves, we can connect with other people and be further able to enact the change that we want to. And having that partnership, those cooperatives better facilitated is a great opportunity that we see here. Also, access for those spaces like the Committee on World Food Security, like COP26, like the Rome-based agencies, different spaces that often young people have not been able to really impact, is an exciting opportunity here, and to bring young people together also on food systems. For instance, in my experience, I have been engaging around food within the climate space because there is this large youth momentum on climate. And so I've been trying to talk about it within that larger space. But now we can have our own space on food systems and everything that we're doing about that, and have our own movement in that space. And also bringing those ideas into concrete plans and action. So going more into the year by year, some of the different areas that we thought we could progress on yearly is through active participants. So increasing the amount of young people that are actively participating in the Action Assembly. We're hoping to have an annual report that we'd reach the 10th annual by 2030. And it can be very simple for the first year, but just measuring what we're doing and making sure that we're on track there. And also starting out at least with some involvement around the Committee on World Food Security this year and COP26, and then making sure that we're reaching those key intergovernmental UN spaces moving forward as well. And then having, obviously we have this flagship event this year, and also looking to have other signature events and monthly partner events moving forward. We also hope to reach representation from, we're measuring this in terms of countries as well, the geographic representation, and making sure that we're increasing in that, and that we are getting young people from a variety of countries, and that we're also externally reaching. We thought maybe through following on social media is a good way to check that we're reaching out, not just the young people who are part of the group, but also that we are reaching out in terms of education and bringing forward the food priorities of young people. And we also discussed an ambassador program where we could perhaps recruit others to also spread our message. And lastly, here are some of the key dates that we set down. These are just the more upcoming ones. Obviously, some of these are yearly events, but directly moving forward, we have, for instance, World Food Day, the Nutrition for Growth Summit, Ecosaki Forum coming up next year. Here's some of the areas that we could engage around and continue doing that moving forward. So what we're really excited is to hear from you, and Lawrence, I will hand it back to you to guide that discussion. But just again, emphasizing that these are just some ideas that we have put out there so that we can start the discussion and start really defining what we want to be the action plan for World Food Forum moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Lana. And as we have now all heard, the action plan is a very important document, as it outlines the goals, the vision and aim of the World Food Forum and how it will evolve in the next years. And as we heard already this morning, this World Food Forum is about act and activism. It's about bringing the voice of the youth to the table. It's about creating new ways of working that are actively inclusive and transparent. And we just heard from Giovanna just before that we need to take into account all the specific context of young people and understand that they might have struggled being activists. Like you don't get money when you're an activist. Tommaso also said that we need a cultural change, and thinking about this with this mindset, I would like to really ask you how you would see the action plan, how to be smart in the way, how can we evolve and how can we make sure that the World Food Forum is offering what you as youth and young people need to make changes. So, I already see a hand up. Anna, you have the floor.
Thank you, Lawrence. I was wondering regarding the inclusivity part, how is there a specific strategy to connect with smallholder farmers and communities that maybe do not have access to internet? Is there a, for example, the ambassador program is responsible for connecting these other voices to discuss in these kind of forums?
Lana?
Thank you for that question. I wouldn't say that the ambassador program would necessarily be responsible for that area. I think they'd be more responsible for like spreading the external messages and the youth priorities. But I think one of the key aspects is the partnership. So instead of trying to build from scratch, partnering with the groups that are engaging and that are led by the grassroots young people, so that we are not trying to build a new structure, but rather just empowering where possible and connecting to these decision-making processes and setting up all those connections from young people doing work in food systems. And then I think this is also something that connects closely with what we were talking about in terms of governance for the Action Assembly and how this is going to be carried out. So something that we'd love more input on. If you have any ideas on how specifically this could be carried out, that's definitely something we're very open to as well.
Okay, perfect. Thanks.
Thank you, Lana. I just have also read a comment from Guillermo in the chat before, and he was saying that I try to translate it in the best way, that education at ground level should be and linked with tradition and knowledge are the way towards food security, and we need to move towards food sovereignty too. Maybe how would the plan address or help organization educate people in their context?
I think it can be, since it's connecting different people and bringing that together, we can help to share knowledge and to share best practices and kind of like, this is how I spread education in my community. This is how I brought that forward, and be able to share that with each other, and also use kind of the resources that we have behind this with the different intergovernmental processes, the UN agencies, things like that, to try and help bring those forward as well. So I think education should be a really key area that we have set forward as bringing forward through this, and hoping to facilitate that through knowledge sharing is specifically what we have down right now. But I think really that connection with different people where they can say, this is what I have, like this is a toolkit you can use, or this is what I did. And having that connection also to the processes where you can try to talk to, for instance, your ambassador, negotiator in agriculture, and say, this is super important, and it would be great if like some policy or some negotiations could pass on this. So that's also another opportunity.
Thanks, Lana, for this very comprehensive answer. I have Amin, I give you the floor.
Thank you. I wanted to maybe share my opinion and also know what kind of concept you have about the action plan based on what Lana mentioned. For instance, those who want to be active, those activists who might have some restrictions due to where they live, due to the accessibility, the tools that they have, how they can contribute to this action plan. So in my own personal opinion, I think that when we talk about an action plan, we should have a mind free of a certain level of activism, that you are not necessarily, everyone is going to be active at the same level. And I think that we have to think about this as different scales, at an individual level, at a social level, at your own community, and someone could be even activist at a political level. So for this, I think it's important that if we are going to have an action plan that includes all of the youth in this action plan, we have to have a sort of a map of our let's say abilities, of our skills, the backgrounds that we all have, something that we can use when we want to mobilize this energy, this movement, these youths. And I think this is something that, because youth have been, let's say, not given the stage in the past, they don't have this voice. So this means that we have been somehow invisible and we have not been seen out there. So maybe the first step that we can help for ourselves to be seen is to map this out, know our strengths and our weaknesses, and start working on that and contribute to the action plan according to those maps.
Thank you. I mean, this is a very useful comment, a map of skills of all the youth joining this forum. I have a comment in the chat from Sada. I would like you, if you would like to take the floor, you can do it in Arabic, but unfortunately I cannot read Arabic, so either you take your hand up and then you can take the floor, or I will just try to translate it afterwards into Google Translate. I also have in the meanwhile Maria who would like to speak. Please, Maria, you have the floor.
Yeah, hi. As always, I find myself agreeing with Amin and with the wonderful work that you, Laurence, and Lana, and the whole team did for this Youth Action Compendium. I think that this was the first dream that we had at the beginning of the Youth Action track, and the one thing that I would like to stress more than all of these other I don't know how we're supposed to prioritize, let's say, areas, because they're all extremely fundamental and the list just gets longer and longer, but the idea that this document stay living and constantly adaptable, constantly ready to be proven wrong, if you may, as well. Because it is hard to do what Amin is proposing and what we propose of reaching globally, of making sure that we do not solely think about new solutions, but also recognize and uplift traditional knowledge of communities who have been defeating or attempting to defeat what we now are calling issues, but they've been doing it for decades. And the recognition of these best practices, that you want to call them best practices, if you may, that's already hard enough to see and to highlight. And I feel like that should be core. But even more so, I feel that that is kind of also what the World Food Forum is trying to do. Now, along with the core sessions of the Youth Action track, as well as all of the other tracks of the World Food Forum with innovation, education, culinary, and all of the other tracks that I hope that the participants are very familiar with, there were also a variety of side events that were held today for the Youth Action track. Today, yesterday, and tomorrow, and in the months in which we organized, where local producers, local farmers, indigenous people, local communities have come together to discuss their priorities. And in organizing those sessions, unfortunately, they couldn't make it here, but I would love that, since we keep on saying that this is just the beginning for the World Food Forum, that next week, next month, all of the organizers of side events, all of the participants who heard this come together again to make sure that everybody really does have a chance to give their own. And then this stems within their local communities, within their national working groups, to make sure that even those who do not have access to 6Connects, who do not have access to Zoom, can actually be represented and heard of, no?
Thank you, Maria. It's a very good comments in general, because you made a few one. I wanted to ask you whether you said that we might want to add as an. I wonder where you would put it in the document. For example, the fact that we need to uplift this traditional knowledge and empower and really understand that our goal is to also support these communities that are trying to solve the problems that we have for many years. I don't know, there's like the vision, but I would say maybe in the goals or in the aim of the World Food Forum.
Yeah, so yeah. Let me see. I think it specifically speaks more to hearing from young people of all the different groups, including like indigenous and smallholder farmers, and to connect with the grassroots, I think is the more specific language.
Thank you, Lana. I have Lisan. You have the floor.
Yeah, I want to add to the point that Maria just mentioned about the other action tracks. So we talked about education, and that's one of the action tracks. So I think it's also important to mention that one is there. But also I was in a session at the pre-COP day on behavioral science, and there were 2 behavioral scientists there that talked about how to also do this, how to also make changes and connect on a local level people, and also to engage them, and also to like make a group effort of this. And I think that's also, I think there are also within the World Food Forum, there are multiple tracks working on this, and also the behavioral scientists, they might also have an idea on how to incorporate more like, yeah, behavioral science. I don't know, I'm not really aware of what is in there, but to add it all to the compendium, for instance, and to see which practices are already available or which tools are already available in that way, to also address the question that Amin, or the comment that Amin made, and also that Maria just mentioned, that it's quite hard how to do this. We can learn perhaps also from tools in there. I think, yeah, we can also use already available examples for this.
Thank you, Lisan. I don't know, Lana, if you have already been in touch with some behavioral scientists, or if they're already part of the network.
I wouldn't say that we have been in touch with them about this, but that is really interesting to think about, and I really appreciate all of the ideas.
Well, I have been, well, at least I talked about the compendium with them because I was in the session. So that's why I also know that they were part of, they're within the education track. And correct me if I'm wrong, Maria or Matteo or Tommaso, but it's also an ongoing track besides the Youth Action Assembly. So they're working on this as well. So if we talk about synergy, it's all a World Food Forum. So education, innovation, but also the Youth Action Assembly. I think we have a lot to learn from each other as well.
Thank you, Lisan, for underlining this very important fact that we need to work together and really cross-fertilize each other in our way of working. I have Amin, you have the floor.
Sorry for my never-ending interventions. I'm just really happy about what Maria raised about the local knowledge, about indigenous knowledge, and about the importance of this. And from the remarks that Lisan made, for example, about the behavioral science, to make a bridge between this, I think before going to this step and thinking of bridging indigenous people, the local communities, let's say with the youth, I think it's also important that we first think about building that lost trust that has, that lost trust that we are missing between the different layers of the society. Well, we know that our minorities, our indigenous people, have been suppressed all over the world in their societies for many, many years. And now we expect them that in one day to connect with us and share with us their knowledge, and we learn from them and try to find solutions. Although I think we need to first take some time to self-educate ourselves about their knowledge. And this is the effort that we need to make, and we cannot expect them to come and express themselves to us. I think we do have the tools, but I put the blame a little bit also on the academia as well, on the modern science that did not really try to teach us or show us more of indigenous knowledge, of traditional ecological knowledge, for instance, related to food systems. So I think it's our responsibility as youth to also raise awareness among ourselves and to self-educate ourselves about the importance and the role of these knowledge systems. And then after we think that we know, or we feel that we know a little bit about how these works, how this, let's say, related to my work, these heritage systems work, then we can maybe start opening up and having dialogues with them or connecting with the indigenous youth as well, that would support this process and this educational or knowledge exchange. That was my comment.
Thank you, Amin. It's a very important comment. I think there's a lot of movement now on, for example, decolonizing sciences or academia, which are very important. And this could also be a very important movement to connect to understand better and build trust again. I have Matteo, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. Again, a very, very rich discussion. I wanna continue what we were saying before, because beside the theme of education, one of the main things that we will continue working is to create a young scientist group that will work alongside of the World Food Forum Youth Assembly and in general the World Food Forum. Of course, to elect and to put together this team of young scientists, it takes a while. We've been reaching out to a number of partners, and we also have developed a term of reference, and we're really working very hard to make sure that after the World Food Forum, there is also the young scientist group that will support technically all the work that we're doing. And I think that's extremely important, right? So that there is a lot of motivation, a lot of ideas, a lot of push towards sustainable solution. But of course, fact matters as much as ideas and goodwill. And that's why we're really making sure that there is ideas, there is goodwill, but there is also very substantial support from our World Food for Young Scientists. Over to you, Lawrence.
Thank you, Matteo, for this great answer and compliment. On this, I would also like, as I don't see any other hands, to build up on maybe what you said, Matteo, and ask to Lana whether there's already in the action plan some actions that are defined to the various constituents of the World Food Forum, because I saw that there's a advisory group, there's a focal group, there's the assembly, there's a lot of different actors around it. And I don't know if it's already attributed to some of them. It's a question to you, Lana.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that? I wasn't sure if it was to me.
Whether, so for example, there's in the action plan, there's the vision, there's the aim, where we want to go, etc. And I was wondering whether there was already some responsibility given to some of the groups, constituents that are part of the World Food Forum, such as the assembly. Who is taking care of this goal? Is it the assembly, or is it the advisory function? Or yeah, so this was.
No, not yet. We're still in very early stages, just setting out the ideas. So it isn't even concretely like this is the final action plan. So nothing has been assigned, but that is definitely something that we have to move forward with to make sure that this doesn't just stay ideas and turns into concrete actions. So would love ideas on how best to move forward with that, and also making sure that we're getting a wide range of feedback to refine the action plan before we do that.
Thank you, Lana. Makes sense to do it in a further stage. I see that there's a comment from Guillermo Rubio. I don't know if you want to take the floor. You're saying the dialogue of knowledge refers to the mutually enriching encounter and relationship between sciences and academic disciplines, together with other types of knowledge, for example, indigenous, peasants, women's, and ancestral cultures, among others that arise from the exercise of daily life and are made up of practical and symbolic meaning. Therefore, the dialogue of knowledge integrates the knowledge built from the academy and those that are created from identities and the collective relationship with the environment. I think it's summarized very well a bit what was said before, and it adds up on comments from Amin before. Does anyone have another comment or question? So for the moment, we raised up the question of how to reach young people from different areas and different contexts. We underlined how important it is education and knowledge sharing, and also what does it mean to, what is defined as knowledge to evolve in this. So we have also, we said that we want to link more with other types of science, like behavior science, and also critical academia members, etc. And I see a comment from Ahmed. Do you want to take the floor? I don't see it. Maybe I can ask Lana on your experience across a lot of different engagement areas as climate change, food systems, or animal welfare. How could you imagine best bridging forces across youth constituency in this area, and in order to really answer to this systemic problem in a systemic way also?
I think one of the easiest ways is just having those discussions and working together on food systems. At least in my experience, I've seen that when you're all saying that you want more equitable, healthy, sustainable food systems, and you see that some people are coming from a nutrition background saying that, some people are coming from a human rights perspective, or climate action, or nature protection, or all of these different issues, but it's still working on the same thing. You end up learning more about all these different ways that someone could come to the conclusion that we need to change our food systems, and end up working on the same things that you are. And I think that young people in and of ourselves are already breaking down a lot of those silos that have existed in the past, in talking about health separately and nutrition separately and climate separately and all those things. And I think that bringing us together is one of the easiest ways to start really making those bridges really sturdy and moving forward with that.
Thank you, Lana. Does anyone has another follow-up questions or comments on the document, things to add, things that are missing? Else, we're coming to the end of the session. I will quickly summarize and say what Ahmed, what are the ways to communicate the word of youth to leaders? Lana, do you want to take this, or maybe, yeah?
You said to communicate the words of youth to leaders?
Yes, I think this is it.
Okay, I know that, oh, go ahead.
No, you go ahead, and then after you, I will ask Maximo Torero, that I saw that he just connected, to help us answer on that. So Lana, you go first, and then I will see if Maximo can help us responding to that. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. No pressure, right? So I was going to add in that there are some regional contexts. Obviously, there are different national pathways, for instance, and how easy that is can differ by your country. If they have a process for getting in touch, for instance, I was going to university in the US, and I know that you can talk to the representative for Congress and like in the government that represents you, and you can go through that policy process. But internationally also, one of the main areas that we're talking about here is getting young people to be able to influence leaders in the climate and nutrition space and have our voices heard there. So I think making those connections to the spaces where the negotiations and decisions are being made, for instance, making sure that young people have a strong voice on food systems with the climate negotiations that are going to happen in less than a month. That is one key way to make sure that we're bringing that forward.
Thank you very much, Lana. I see Maximo Torero. We were trying to answer a question from Ahmed about what are the ways to communicate the word of youth to leaders. Do you have comment on
Okay. I am not youth, so it's difficult for me to answer, but that's okay. I think the best way to communicate what the recommendations that you can come up is with very concrete actions which are evidence-based. The worst we can do is to go to the blah, 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 blah that many people are talking about and to focus more on content and clear actions. And that's where the youth can empower themselves, because we need to find solutions on problems which not necessarily will be traditional solutions. And we need to innovate, and we need to find solutions out of the box. But the trick at this, in my perception, is if we want to bring a solution, we better have evidence to show that that's the solution to move forward. So the more evidence we can bring around what the youth voices are about, the best it will be. No, let me give you concrete examples. No, the innovation things that happened on Saturday, for example. They were really, really amazing, good solutions to specific problems, and was innovative ideas developed by young people to resolve a problem. It was very targeted to a problem solution using state-of-the-art innovation. And that is what I believe could help countries to adopt them and to create action of transformation. The same applies to policy. No? We live in an enormous black box of lack of evidence, different perceptions, and the more we can help in bringing those type of solutions, the best it will be. And that goes from technological adoption, data, to institutional change. No, we were just discussing here, okay, how we can allow smallholder farmers to do precision agriculture. What is needed there to do precision agriculture? Digital plays a crucial role, and youth can bring digital because they are more capable to use digital today because they are trained on digital world. All the generations is more difficult. So how we can combine those skill sets with innovation that allows farmers to adopt things that normally will have economies of scale. So how we can break this economies of scale and make this technology scale neutral. How we can help farmers which have high levels of illiteracy to connect, and food icons plays a role here, no? That you have been looking, a new language, how we break that barrier. So many ideas that if we do it properly, and I think that's the way. So if you ask me, my concrete answers will be bring solutions with solid evidence so that you can challenge policymakers and keep challenging them until they understand that they need to use them. Back to you.
Thank you very much, Maximo Torero. If no one has another comment, oh, I see Aida saying, I wish I could know how many of young society that have ideas about food system in real life work in this field. I think the experience is the most important factor for being mentor between future connecting people. Maybe Aida, do you want to build on what you wrote? Or else I would pass the floor to Lana to answer it. I don't see a hand raised, so Lana, maybe you. want to
I suppose
answer?
it's more of a comment than a question, but let me see. Yeah, it's I think it's helpful, but I think it's also key to have young people from different areas, you know, young people who work in agriculture, who are food producers, and also young people who work in, for instance, science or academia, who work in policy and different backgrounds would be my view on that, and that we can all add something to the conversation.
Thank you. I think we're up to time. So we got a very huge set of different comments on this action plan. I would summarize quickly with the word access. We talked about how to access people at different levels, people that young people that might not have connection to internet, how to bring them in the loop, and we also said that we need to build trust again with them and with the traditional knowledge and traditional and local communities. We talked about action, about how to help people bring change in and do action in their communities. Maximo Torero said how it's important to have bring evidence-based solutions, be it traditional or innovations. The importance is that a solution is really bringing the change needed. And we got some comments also about digitalization and social media, how they could be leverages to reach more people and to get more people in the loop. And lastly, I would say Amin's proposed to have kind of a depository of the skills of everyone that is part of the community to really try to leverage all the skills and try to have better to be able to do to exchange and find synergy among people. Lana, do you have something to add on my summary?
Perhaps I just remind people that tomorrow at 10 a.m. Central European time, we have the institutional discussion event, and we feature a chat with the ambassador of the Netherlands, and also have the closing ceremony where we'll also talk with Maximo again and have that chat with young people and have those opportunities. So keep an eye out for that.
Thank you, Lana. I was on the point to say it, but perfect. So really join us tomorrow. We will have a lot of more discussion on how to leverage our actions. I will now pass the floor to Matteo that will introduce you a video.
Thank you, and let me congratulate again to both of you, actually to all of you that moderated this afternoon session. You did a tremendous work. It was very engaging, very alive, and we were collected. We were able to collect both in the chat and the live feedback from a lot of participants. I will share with you now the video from the outgoing and incoming ISAC president. I'm sure, and you're familiar with ISAC network, is arguably the largest network of young people, a youth-led organization in the world, but is also a new partner of the World Food Forum, and they want to get engaged and they want to motivate all the young people to get and support the World Food Forum. And after the video, please don't leave us, because finally it's time to play. What do I mean by that? That our colleagues will actually start the presentation of an incredible video game, but I don't want to take even more time, because we're running a little bit late. So let me share the video, but then stay tuned for the video game presentation.